You're listening to the Personal Growth Podcast with Perza and Cole.
Last week on the Personal Growth Podcast, we sat down with photographer DJ Davis, and he told us about his time in the military, his new job at a dispensary, and what it's like taking pictures. This week, we are here in the Tri-Point Studios, not in front of a live studio audience, with actor, improviser, stand-up comic, father, and all-around good guy, Austin Von Johnson. Welcome to the Personal Growth Podcast.
God, what an introduction. Speaking of father, how old is your little one now?
Yeah, almost a month.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
7 weeks. He'll be 2 months on the 10th.
And he's had about 4 hours of sleep since
It's a whole
the
thing.
baby's been born.
It's a whole thing. There are so many empty cans of Monster Energy drink in my office. I'm doing air quotes right now for those of you who are listening. Air quotes when around office, but
I like you to be very, very descriptive. On
yeah,
if
It really goes a long ways to get that as a listener.
It
it really does.
Because
Absolutely.
we're like sitting with us and they're talking. Well,
it enhances the user experience.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody would be very upset if we were just like, oh man, Eric, your shirt, it's hilarious,
And then not. say
and that's
what
all we
it's about.
say. Eric isn't wearing that hilarious shirt. I don't
It's
know what's
really
it
not.
say. What's it? I don't
It says rock is dead, paper killed it.
Oh,
That's kind of funny.
killing it with those rock paper scissors.
That's
jokes,
right,
guys.
baby. You know how I
Yeah.
do.
So, Austin,
Yeah,
7-week-old child.
yeah.
Tell us about your child's name, because I've heard of it.
Okay, so my son's name is Winter Boyd Johnson, and my wife came up with Winter because they're like
Real quick. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You and I have known each other for a long time now, and I just now realized
I know what's happening.
that Von is your middle name.
My middle name.
I thought Von Johnson was the last. This whole time.
Yeah,
I've
many
thought
people do.
it was the last name. It's just
Johnson. My parents named me Vaughn. Like that was my middle name because my parents thought it sounded cool, and that's it.
Huh.
That's really
all
the
right.
only
Well, I learned
real
something
reason.
today.
Yeah. No, you're not the only one. A lot of people have known me for a very long time that don't know that unless it comes up in conversation, which usually I don't lead with that because it's weird.
Right. Like, hi, I'm
like
Austin Von Johnson. By the way, Von is the middle name.
Yeah.
Just in case you were wondering. Now, can I interest you in some of my acting services?
Yeah.
But no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got some acting
Your
services.
wife, who's a lovely woman, by
Yeah,
the way.
she's super cool. Everyone likes her a lot more than me, which is
Like,
really actually
More
that's
than you like her?
no. Good call. Yeah, it's clarification. No, it's like they like her more than they like me, which is a really, really very good thing to have because,
sure.
That means you did well. I think.
Yeah. The only problem is, if you guys ever get divorced, you lose all your friends.
All my friends are gone.
That's the-
Every single one of
They'll
them.
choose her.
Yeah.
Not that that'll happen, because for those of you who don't know, they're like the cutest couple who's ever walked the earth. Like it's almost a little sickening how adorable they are
We're
when they're together.
stupid cute, you guys.
They
Stupid
really
cute.
are.
I
Made
believe that.
Made a cute baby.
I've seen you guys together probably one time, like at the club.
Yeah.
And yeah, the whole sickening aspect that it talks about is
It's
pretty
true.
accurate.
It's true.
It's really nice because you talk because obviously I'm at the club all the time, but we live very independent lives, which is actually very healthy. I feel like
you don't want to be on top of each other, 'cause
right.
that-
Just
I mean,
so it's I really enjoy my marriage, guys.
Good.
So that's good news.
That's a pleasant change to hear a man, talking, pleasantly about his marriage as opposed to the old ball and chain.
Yeah,
I had
absolutely.
to ask, so it's nice. It's you guys seem like you have a really good relationship, and that's
It works
cool.
out. It works out well. It goes well.
Do you think that you and your wife would ever be interested in doing like a podcast together with Eric and I, talking about the things that have made your guys' relationship work and the things that make it difficult that you guys work through?
Ooh, 2-part series.
Ooh,
I like
maybe,
it.
yeah. I think that'd be interesting. She, well, actually, yeah, probably. Sarah has done a podcast before, and so I think that she'd be totally up for that. Usually she's not a very like outgoing. In that regard, we're polar opposites.
Right.
Total opposites attract. She is very introverted, does not want to get on a stage, whole thing, and. But yeah, she's been on a podcast before. She'd probably be down for that. I think that'd be fun.
That's it's interesting the dynamic of on stage versus like in a studio recording.
Right.
Like it's a little bit more intimate when you're talking with a small like 1, 2, or 3 maybe people versus like an entire room full of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the level of vulnerability that it takes to be having an interaction on a small scale versus a large scale. It's kind of I could see how that would be a thing.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever I'm up doing improv and stand up, I mean, when you're on stage as performing in any capacity, there's kind of like an on-stage persona that you can't help but embody when you're on stage, and it completely changes when you're in. The moment you get off stage, whether even if it's like conversing with audience after a show, or being in a setting like this where you're talking with people, it's a completely different dynamic. So that's
true.
Not at all the same.
I definitely I've seen that from comics that seem really friendly, or comics. That's the experience that I have the most with, where people seem really friendly and like someone you'd want to have a conversation with, and then they get off stage and then they're back to their like grumpy selves that you don't want to be around.
Yep.
That's just I've seen that more often than wanting to hang out with them. And there's a few comics that I've been pleasantly surprised by, but yeah, that's a totally random thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like nobody gets into comedy because they're a completely well-adjusted person. Like I feel like we've got something about ourselves, and maybe Austin will agree with me, that is very much like we want attention, but on our own terms. So like, yeah, we'll get up on stage and we'll try to entertain you and do the best we can for you to have a good time. But once we're off stage, it's like, I'm done. I did my job. I left it all up there. I want to, have a beer and relax now that I'm, because we say that, we're going to work, right? When we're, because that's what it is. It's, it's not, and that's why I think hecklers feel like they can do what we do, because we make it look easy. At least the good ones do. Right, the good ones make it look easy. The bad ones, you can tell that they're struggling. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you find that that's that's the same for you? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if whether it's a long run of shows, whatever show it may be, or if like I've been on a film set or something, like if it's prolonged, and then like that day after, it's like, oh well, a bunch of people that I'm not like super keen on are coming over to the house. I'm like, now I have to put my stage persona back on and like entertain these people, and it becomes a burden. It's a really weird dynamic where when I'm, at least for me, when I'm off stage or when I'm off camera, or it's nice to be off stage and off camera. You can really relax, but and not to say that I don't like being on stage. Obviously, that's what I'm doing, right? Like that's my career. No going back. No more day job. Done with it. Like this, it's do or die on this thing, and I love it, and it's fun, and it's what I'm supposed to do. But that, you're right. It's still work.
Yeah. And I feel like people think that like because you're one way on, or even if they hear that you're a comedian, people always expect you to be on, or like if they know you to be a funny person, if you're not being funny, they assume something's wrong, or you're having a bad day, or whatever. And it's like, no, I'm fine. I don't constantly need to try and make you laugh. Like if you want me to make you laugh, give me money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And come see a show.
It's this weird constant expectation for you to be on. Yeah, that's blah.
That whole phrase of being on, like I think that's probably true in a lot of different areas. like being a bartender. I've talked to people about this, like the barrier between you and the customer, or you and the person that you're entertaining, or you and whomever,
Right.
From that providing a service kind of a thing. There's that barrier. Sometimes it's very much so visible, and sometimes it's completely invisible. The stage for a comic, it is very obvious from the people who are being entertained's point of view that there's a wall. And then, like, I'm thinking about me being a bartender. I rarely want to go on the other side of the bar and see from that point of view anymore.
Right.
Because, like, it's odd, but I'm in this, like, position of authority kind of whenever I'm behind the barrier that makes me have the authority.
Right.
And then getting on the opposite side of that, it's just not fun for me anymore. And
Because you're drunk with power.
no,
That's
no,
all.
it's
That's all
not that. It's like
It kind of ruins it for you.
it totally ruins
Yeah.
it. But it also is like whenever I come onto the other side of the bar, it's similar to what you guys are describing, where like I'm behind the bar and I'm providing a service and I'm cheery and happy, and I want you to like give me more money and I want you to enjoy your time here. But I come onto the other side of the bar and you want me to be that same person, and I'm not the same person.
Yeah.
So like it's interesting to hear you guys talking about what you're talking about, because I feel that I can relate to it on a different level.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. Like people are people.
Why should it be?
Do you feel like, as a bartender, like your knowledge of how stuff behind the bar works kind of ruins you as a patron, because you're seeing all this stuff that those of us who aren't bartenders wouldn't even see, but you're like, oh, they messed up this thing, and we're like, what? I thought everything was fine. It's like, no, that's against code right there.
There's a little too much Kahlua in this. The pour count was off, or what? I mean, well, obviously you wouldn't know that.
I would know,
unless you're watching them make the drink.
Oh yeah. Well, I always am watching from a like, does this person know what they're doing, or are they, whether or not they know what they're doing, like, would I do it that way?
Right.
And to answer your question, there's definitely things, especially at the club, whenever I'm coming in after someone that's worked already and they are setting things up differently than I would have set them up. Like there's a little OCD thing that happens. Like I've got my absolute rack where I put all my absolute vodkas, and I set it up where I got the absolute regular, citron, mandarin, and then above that I got lime, raspberry, the strawberry juice, and the apple juice absolutes, because I'm using these two with two drinks. I'm using these two with mules more often than anything else. And whenever I get a plain old absolute, it's the easiest one to grab behind the ones I use most often. And whenever I come in, when somebody opened before me and they have it all like what is your method here? Like, what are you, like, you can't just put bottles willy-nilly wherever you want. Like, that's
Right.
not efficient.
No.
You know? And so it drives me up the wall. And I've literally, this is why I do this. And if you did this too, it would make more sense to you in the long run. But because it's not affecting you personally,
Right.
you don't care. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But this isn't about me.
Yes, we're here to talk about Austin and his story with personal growth. So you mentioned that being an actor and a comedian, and this is what you're doing. There's no more day job. There's no going back. Tell us a little bit how you got to that point.
Ooh, all right. So my kind of like acting and comedy career got started in Boise about 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
That's when I did my first. I did my first short film in Boise. I did my first paid improv comedy show, and from there it was just kind of a one connection leading to the next, right? Like one film leads to the next film, leads to a commercial, leads to another film, whatever the case is, kind of slowly growing, meeting people, networking, making sure I do a good job along the way so that they want to work with me again, or whatever the case is. And the same thing with